Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael, and we're excited you joined us for this adventure.
So today's very special guest is Lee Yoder. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow, thank you, Susie. That's the best introduction I've ever had on a podcast.
Yes, that's exciting. I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
I'm just super excited that you're here. As we mentioned offline, it's been super cool to see each other just on social media all the time. But then once I was on that panel that Julie Holly hosted about leaving your W-2, I was just like, man, I got to get to know this guy better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ditto. I felt the same way. Right. Yeah. I'm excited to be talking to you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Lee, would you mind sharing with our Adventures family a little bit more about your background, like why you started investing in real estate?
Yeah, sure. I'll take it back to, leaving the W-2 like you just set up there, Susie. So I'm a physical therapist by trade. So went to school for a long time, became a physical therapist. Ended up doing home health physical therapy where I was driving around to mostly old folks' homes doing therapy in-house for people. And it was a really flexible job, paid plenty. So in some ways, kind of a dream job. My wife and I were starting, our family. And so she loved it. I mean, if it were up to her, I'd just do that forever. The problem for me is I just feel like I learned that God didn't create me for a job like that because I was just really bored. It was not challenging, wasn't a difficult job, wasn't, exciting or fulfilling. So after a while, I'm like, I can't do this. Well, the company I was with, I didn't really know it when I came on with them, but they're really a staffing company. But more than that, they were just a startup company. So they were looking for somebody to come in as a clinical director. So I kind of jumped at that opportunity. They asked me, and so they hired me for that. So now I'm managing the therapist. And more than that, I didn't really enjoy managing the therapist, but what I really enjoyed doing was building a division within this company, within the startup company, and kind of started getting the entrepreneurial juices flowing, right? That I didn't know that I had inside me. So pretty soon I was doing no therapy. So this is, I was only 3 years out of going to school for 7 years, 7 years beyond, grade school or whatever. So starting with kindergarten, I went to schools 20 years straight, then became a physical therapist, did it for a few years. And then I wasn't doing it anymore, but I was loving the business operations, that kind of stuff. Well, then I was kind of on the opposite end where now my work is fulfilling and challenging and exciting. I mean, I'm building a division within a startup company, a bunch of young people just really getting after it, but now it's not good for my family. So again, still starting the young family. My wife stayed home with the kids, which just means she wants me to come home even more so than if she was working and came home, right? Because she's with them all day. So, she's always telling me hey, when you work overtime, I'm working overtime. So just keep that in mind. and I know that was true. So that didn't feel right either, but it just kind of felt all right, well, then I guess I have a job that's really exciting and fulfilling, but it's not going to be good for my family. Or I go back to doing home health therapy where it's good for the family, but I'm just going to be bored for the rest of my life. And luckily there's more than just those two options. And someone handed me a real estate book. Then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, light bulb moment, just kind of got the gears turned and started talking to some people. Talked to a buddy of mine that said, hey, could you do your job from home? If you want to get into real estate, because I decided I think I want to get into real estate. So I talked to a friend and he said, can you work from home? Can you have more flexibility? If you want to get into real estate and you want to do it kind of on the side, can you have more flexibility? Well, for me, that was not possible. And that's one thing that I think people can relate with today, guys, is because more people than ever are working from home.
Yeah.
So more people than ever can kind of have that flexibility. So I thought, well, I can't do that here climbing the corporate ladder because I was on my way to becoming a director of operations and I was going to have to be at work even more. So I was going in the opposite direction. So I decided to go back to home health physical therapy where boring job, but I have flexibility, I have margin, I could take on something else. So in 2016, I left that corporate job. I took probably a 30% pay cut. I was doing pretty well for that company, but wanted to start real estate as a side hustle. It took me a year. So it was toward the end of 2017 that we flipped a house and then kind of building from there. But I'll stop talking, but that's kind of how I got into real estate.
Which is, I love how you were reflective enough to tell yourself okay, I'm going to have to step down, right? Because that's huge in itself. One, because a lot of people can't do that. They fear that losing that pay cut, or because then when they have made the more money, the lifestyle creep happens.
Yes, that's a problem. Yep.
Yeah, they do that, or else they are just nervous about taking that pay cut. So it's super cool that you took that leap, especially not really knowing for a lot of your life that you had that entrepreneurial sense in you, because that's hard sometimes, right?
Yep.
If you're not surrounded by it, then you have to, it's learning a whole new skill.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes me laugh because my wife kind of during this time, it was a real learning experience for both of us. And it was a challenging time. We had young kids and it's just a tough time, you know, in a couple's journey together.
Yeah.
I remember one time saying, I did not know you were like this when I married you. And I said, I didn't either. You know, I had no idea. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't doubt that you didn't know this about me. I didn't either. And another good point you made, Susie, and I think people shouldn't miss it. When we took that 30% pay cut, we did not have to change our lifestyle because we were not living on all of our money, right? Like we weren't spending all our money. So that really wasn't that big of a worry for us. But yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't in that situation. And sometimes it's important to get yourself there so that you can take some risks. Yeah. You can take some chances. We were able to do that because we had a lot of margin in our, you know, expenses in our lifestyle.
Yeah. So moving from like that clinical job where you were gone often, but then going back to seeing patients doing home health and then creating a whole new business, that to me seems like all your time then is taken up all over again. So how did that go?
Yes. Great point. With the flip, we did a flip first. And that was the exact experience. This seems no different because I had a full-time job where maybe I was only working honestly, 35, maybe 40 hours a week. So that's a cush job, right? But then I'm doing a flip on top of that. So yeah, then it got really busy. I mean, especially the last 3 months because it took 9 months to do it. I did a ton of the work myself. The last 3 months was we got to get this done. Yeah. And absolutely, it was my wife's this is just like being back at the corporate job. And it was. And the funny thing is too, guys, I feel like God gave me this perfect picture so that I could just learn this lesson was I took about a 30% pay cut and then I made that back with the flip. So I literally just made the same money, but I was doing the same amount of work, but just doing different work. And so for me, it was this perfect picture that flipping is not investing. Flipping is just a different job because I traded one really busy job for two not so busy jobs to equal a really busy job and make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And then once I sold the flip, I had nothing. Right. So it was just a different job. Now it did get me started in real estate. So I'm not totally against it.
Yeah.
It got me down that path. I started meeting some people. So I wouldn't necessarily, it's one of those things I wouldn't necessarily change it, but it only took me one flip to realize that's not investing. I know, again, I blame too much stuff on my wife. I don't mean to say she said, it's she's my good conscience and we talk things out together. But again, her and I kind of had this conversation. She's or what I sold her on was not what flipping was. She's you talk to me about passive income and residual income and comes in every month. We got none of that with the flip. And, and I'm I know, no, we didn't. So it was kind of nice. And also just listening to podcasts, just like your guys, I know Michael Blanc is a podcast that I have always really enjoyed. And he always says that it took him 36 flips to learn that flipping is not investing. And I'm listening to him while I'm flipping. And I still had to do one of my own, but because of listening to him and seeing it myself, I was yep, he's right. Flipping's not investing. So I'm not going to do that. So kind of a long way to answer your question, Susie. As we got into the next one, we did a duplex and I had other people doing more of the work. So, and it was flexible, right? I could be there when I wanted to. So yes, I was still busy and I'm still busy today, even though I'm full-time investor, but there's a ton more control there. And I do a lot of it from home and I take the family with me and now my wife's involved. So, and I won't say though either, guys, I know a lot of people say oh, I'm working for myself and I'm working more than ever. I'm not going to say that. I don't do that. I do work a lot still, but I really, really enjoy working. So honestly, I have to try to make myself not work so much, but it's really the flexibility that is the game changer. Yeah. We can, do what we want. And that's what, even though I was doing the physical therapy and doing the real estate, because I was working for myself, I could decide when it made sense for me to go to the property and do some work. So that was kind of the difference to answer your question.
No, thanks for that.
Okay, quickly. So you said, okay, you did this flip. You read Rich Chef Ford, that's some of the real estate books as well. You decided to do flip, and then you said, well, that's just another job, right? There's no investing involved with it, which is pretty right. It's just full active job. You get a cut of it when you sell the property. And then that's it, right? There's no residual income, like you mentioned, some of that. And then you said something about moving on to a duplex next. Was that a flip as well, or what did you do with the duplex?
Yeah, the duplex ended up basically being a flip. Now, the difference was I did have it rented for a few months. Okay. I kind of was my own landlord. So I got to experience that, which was good. And the residents were great. They made it easy on me, but I just didn't enjoy doing that. And I kind of knew that all along, but it was a good chance to see that and then learn like, okay, I don't want to be a landlord. So I want to get into, properties where I can hire someone to do that. And again, listening to podcasts, reading books, I just kind of knew the people that I kind of identified with and the people I'd listened talking on the podcast. I'm like, okay, I want to be that guy or that girl. And they say, go bigger, faster, and get into multifamily. And so my mind was always there. And so with the duplex and then thinking through that, Michael, I'm like, okay, this duplex is making me, $400 a month. Okay. Or maybe a couple $100, whatever. And I was like, okay, it's going to make me $4,000 a year. I'm going to need 20 of these to kind of get to my financial independence number, right? Yeah. Do I want to own 20 duplexes? The answer was no. And I didn't want to manage them myself. So my cash flow would have went down if I wasn't managing them myself. Right. So things like that was just, I want to go bigger. So that was kind of my next step was into bigger multifamily.
Gotcha. So what was the evolution from that? Was it, you said flip, then duplex, flip, turning to flip, whatever. And then from there, like bring us up to date, like where you're
sure.
Like,
what was
the evolution of everything?
Yeah. So in fall of 2017, bought a house to flip. Sold that in the spring. In the fall of 2018, bought a duplex. In the fall of 2019, I bought a 16 unit, an 8 unit, and a 10 unit. Just did joint ventures on all of those with family, close friends. Was very hands-on as kind of the GC on those, but used a property management company. And those were all local. Everything I've done, guys, is local, Cincinnati, Dayton, Ohio area. And basically spent the whole next year with those 3 small multifamilies, just turning them around. The idea was to hold them for 5 years because at the time I just knew like that's what you do, you 5-year plan or whatever. The market went straight up. I was ready to go full time. Again, kind of changed plans on my wife. I had told her, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get enough rentals where the income replaces my income, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. Get enough rentals where your monthly income replaces. Well, we were like halfway there probably with those 34 units, owning like 50 to 55% of them ourselves in each one of them. I didn't want to wait another year to do that again. And I wasn't finding very many properties in 2020. So I sold all 3 of those, which kind of gave us this big runway. So instead of making the monthly income, it was like, let's take all the equity today and put it in our savings account. And it honestly like gave us enough runway for like 3, 4, maybe even 5 years of paying our expenses. So it was like, okay, now I'll go do this full time. And now I'll do what I said I was going to do. Get enough rentals to replace our income with the monthly income from the profit from the properties. So sold those in 2020. And in 2021, we started going even a little bit bigger in syndicating apartments. And in 2021, we bought a 45 unit, a 47 unit, and a 96 unit. And today we're under contract on a 95 unit.
Whoa.
So kind of taking steps. Yep.
That's exciting.
Cool.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
With the progression of it all, it was like, Michael also mentioned this, like the flip, it was like, meh. The duplex was kind of like, meh. And then you present your wife with something new. How did it all go? Was she loving it from day one?
No. Yeah, I think you guessed it. See, no, it's been really neat. It's been a struggle for sure. In the end, we've just seen why God put us together. And while it's been tough, like we've both been, made better through this. And I try to serve her better. She tries to serve me better. And we work really well together because she's very risk averse. Again, she was like, just be a home health physical therapist for the rest of your career. That's going to be great. And I'm like, I'm bored. I want to, just go do something crazy. Let's go in. And so it was frustrating to her because we did a flip and it kind of sucked, especially for her with the kids, they were too young to be involved in it. So it was really tough. But she's like, okay, kind of comfortable with that. And I'm like, well, let's go do a duplex. And then, the duplex went a little bit better. She got a little comfortable with that. And I'm like, let's go do a 16 unit, and she's like, that is crazy. Like, that's that step, guys, which maybe you guys have experienced and a lot of people do where it's like, now this seems crazy because we don't know anybody that owns an apartment building. Like that just seems like nobody does that. So she's saying that like, nobody does this. People don't do this. Well, of course I'm reading books and listening. I'm like, no, actually people do. We just don't know any of them. They're just out there. Right. And, and that's just the type of person I am. I just keep pushing. I want to keep going. So, the day we were closing on our 16 unit, she finally got used to that idea. Okay. Cause it's a couple month closing process. So she's like, able to absorb this. All right, we're buying an apartment building. It's going to be okay. The day we're closing, I put another 8 unit under contract.
She was
just like, she's like, you will not let me rest. Like you will not let me get comfortable. And I'm like, I'm afraid not. I think, I'm afraid not. So it's always been kind of me pushing. what's been awesome. I mean, I think as you guys can see, it's neat. Again, the way I feel like God has worked this out, because often I've felt like we're moving too slowly. I mean, at any given time, I'm like, we should be doing more. You're not letting me push hard enough. But it's really because she has made me slow down. I mean, I told you, like, our conversation after the flip, I mean, maybe I probably gave myself too much credit. It really is a lot on her. The reason I didn't do another flip, it was her going, hey, hold on. We're not doing another flip. Let's think about this. This is not what you said. I think about it instead of just driving forward like I wanted to. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Let's look more multifamily. We do a duplex. So we've really not done that many deals, but to go from one single family to one duplex to one 16 unit and do a few more. And then we're syndicating. We got 188 units last year. I look back and I'm blown away by that progress and how quickly it's happened. But throughout it, I thought we were moving too slow. So it's because I say, like, we move faster by moving slow. Because, right, we took, I think that's like a book title. I haven't read it yet, but she made us take kind of better steps. And so we actually took bigger steps, but we only took a few. And then also, it's a huge credit to her that we haven't missed yet. Like, we haven't done poorly on a property. We haven't had anything that set us back. And it's because, she's been good about making sure we're, doing the right thing and not just, I mean, I'm a jump and build a parachute on the way down. And our journey's still been a little bit that way, but she's like, no, let's build a little bit of the parachute before we jump. And then let's build a little bit, just staying a little bit ahead of me. So that's how it's worked out. It's been some give and take.
No, which I love though, because even like within that whole process, because clearly Michael and I work together too, you learn a whole different communication style. Like, you learn things about each other that you never thought you like knew or you were going to learn, but you can bring a lot of those skills back into partnerships with the people you're doing real estate with, right? Like, having those conversations. Yes, they're a little bit different, but they're difficult to have. And that's the whole point.
Yes.
Right? Like, you were able to do it with her, and then it's like not the first time then anymore, right? Like, then it becomes the second and the third time with all the other people who are part of the deals. But then it's easier because you said you started syndicating. Like, when passive investors ask you questions, it's like, oh, like, I've had conversations where I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I can do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is like, that is almost my favorite part of this whole entire progression, because it's not also just about real estate. It's like how much better we can become from all of the challenges throughout it.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, well said. It's definitely not all about real estate. I mean, I really enjoy it, but for sure, I'm doing real estate so that I can improve the life of my family and hopefully others as well. But yeah, absolutely. I agree with all that.
What are you most excited about right now? Like, with real estate?
I think, we're about to open up, and this will release afterwards. So I can say this, so we do 506B, so we can't like advertise, but it'll be done by then. But we're about to open up our community of investors to come in. And I'm so excited that's what's really cool about syndication, is that we get to involve a lot of others. I love the power of real estate. I just wish more people knew about the wealth building power of real estate. Also, the cash flow it can provide you today. I love that it pays you today and builds wealth tomorrow. And I think it's a really safe asset, which I think is people should start thinking more and more about. I think we've had this incredibly long run in the stock market that I think is really at risk right now. So I love that we're able to get more people into real estate. I'm really confident in it, and I think it's going to help other people build wealth. It's more work, but it's really fun to get to see others experience the benefits of real estate.
Just one quick thing to follow up on you getting your spouse on board. Would you mind sharing with the listeners, like, some tips maybe that you have, in getting your spouse on board with the whole real estate investing thing? Obviously, since you went through the whole progression of it, you could share any kind of tips you have, or say tricks, but
because this could be for active or passive, right? Because if a passive investor, if their spouse is not on board, then that's hard.
Yes, it is very hard. And it can be very frustrating. I think this is kind of an easy answer. It's really difficult in practice, but communication is really where it's at. And I fall into the trap of like, well, I don't really want to talk with her about that because it's just going to freak her out. I'm just going to upset her. So let's just not talk about that one. And that almost never ends well. Right. And I'm kind of too, like, one of those people that I'm like super optimistic, but to a fault. And when I tell people things, I give them like the really optimistic view, because that's kind of naturally how I think. And that really bit me a lot of times, because I would, just kind of oversell it to her. and then it wouldn't turn out like that. And she's like, well, this stinks. And I'm like, well, no, it's still good. It's just not like I told you or whatever. So be like the honest communication, cause I wanted to, I wanted to paint this picture of like, it's going to be great. And there's going to be no downside and no risks or, no negatives. And that's just not true, especially getting started. So I think, be more honest and have honest, open communication, get on the same page. I mean, sometimes it's like, here's what we definitely learned. Like if we weren't on the same page, then when things go wrong, there's going to be animosity there. Like she's going to really feel anger toward me because she didn't agree to this. Now, if we agree to it and we're on the same page and we're a team moving forward together, when it goes bad, it's like, well, this sucks just as bad, but like we're in it together. We agreed to do this. So we're going to get through this difficult time together versus like, hey, you did this to us, and she wouldn't say that, but there's kind of going to be that feeling if it's like, hey, I know you're not on board, but I'm going to go do this thing. Cause like, this is what I want to do. And, I'm the provider for this family. So I'm just going to go do this and, try to keep up or whatever. That's just never going to work versus, hey, let's communicate about how we can do this. And for me, as Christ followers, I really had to learn too, as we're constantly learning to be less selfish and to serve her. And sometimes I did have to slow down. It does take time to gain trust in something. And my wife had no reason to trust me as a real estate investor because I'd never done it before. So it took some time, but I think communication is really where it's at. You've got to be communicating all along. And my wife really had some good wisdom in that early on where she said, look, I'm not into this, but I don't want this to become a wedge between us. I don't want you to talk to somebody else about it besides me because that causes problems. I still want to be your person and I want this to be something we're doing together. Not something that's going to drive a wedge and cause you to go out and talk to other people. And then you find other people you'd rather be around and talk to. And everybody should think that way, even though it's going to be hard, especially at first. You've got to still communicate that you've got to be on a team together.
No, that's huge because that's hard to do. I mean, you even prefaced it with that, was that like being able to go into that is difficult because even how you wanted to make it seem like nothing was going to go wrong. Like right now, we're just giving off like projected returns, right? But like so many people like still see it as like, no, this is what has to happen. And it's like, I don't have a crystal ball. Like none of us do, but that's also hard to explain to someone when like you work so hard to have the money to be able to invest or like the home that you built or the family that you want to have. It's hard to say, well, this could happen, but nothing could happen,
Yeah.
And like,
oh yeah,
it's nerve wracking to be able to like move into that trust. So the patience that you had is also very wonderful. I mean, both ways to be able to say like, okay, like I just need a little more time and then we've got this. Like that's, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, just entrepreneurship, especially in general, but investing, I mean, you've got to understand there's definitely risk there. Now there's more reward with risk. So there's that, but yeah, there's more risk there.
Totally. No, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah. So we had a great conversation so far, Lee. I know it feels like it went by so quickly, but we are moving towards the end of the show, which moves us into the Adventurous Four. These are 4 exploratory questions we ask all of our guests. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Right. So the first question we have for you, Lee, is where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
You know what? I want to come over to Europe where you guys are at. I had an exchange student my senior year, Marcel, and he's from Switzerland. So he's in Switzerland now. And I have 3 sisters. So he quickly became like a brother to me. He came back over for my wedding. So Hannah knows him. And so I still have not, I can't believe I still have not gone over to visit him in Switzerland, but that's where I want to go, is to visit Marcel in Switzerland.
I love that. That is cool.
Do it.
Can't wait.
Restrictions are lifted mostly. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were literally kind of starting to plan the trip, and then my wife got pregnant, so that was 8 years ago. So I was like, wow, you ruined that one. Good job. You went to Europe and you got pregnant.
That's funny. Well, then our second question is, what is something on your bucket list and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it?
Good. Great question. I would say a lot of my bucket lists are traveling. So, going to Switzerland would certainly be on one. I'll say another one though. We've got 2 kids. We do like a hybrid homeschool program. I love history. So, and my wife, fortunately for me, like loves to camp. So we've brought our kids up that way. So we would love to like do, you know, the United States, like go out west, right, for like 3 or 4 weeks and just see a bunch of things. So that's definitely a bucket list. Real estate, you know, I have the potential of being able to do that in real estate because when you own a property, once you get it repositioned, because for us at least, you know, we kind of do value add property. So it's a lot of work in like the first 6 months, especially, but even the first year. But once you get a property repositioned, if you have it managed by a professional property management company and they're pretty good, you could leave and those properties will continue functioning well and they'll continue paying you. So when we get to that point, like I said, the original dream that I sold my wife on that I'm still working toward is that, hey, you know, we're going to make enough money to pay our expenses from the properties we own. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So when we get to that point, we can feel good that we can travel, you know, all over the United States, seeing all these national parks with the kids while our properties are being managed. You know, we're still checking in with the property management company, but very little work to do there. And they're paying us enough to pay all of our expenses while we're gone.
No, that's awesome. I love that too, actually.
So the third question we have for you, Lee, is what is one piece of advice you have for somebody who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
Okay, passively. Yeah. And I think passive's a great way to do. I would still say networking is really big. I would try to get to know other people that have invested passively. And that's like, you know, when one of the hardest things to do is to find the right sponsor, right? Guys, like who can you trust? Who's done well? To me, like you can look at a bunch of different stuff. You can get to know them. You got to talk to somebody that's invested with them. To me, that's the number one thing. So when you're starting out passive investing, there's a good chance you don't know anybody else that's doing it. Like real estate may be totally new to you. So go out and meet other people that are doing it. You'll gain a lot of confidence in it. You'll gain a lot of assurance. So I think networking is really key, whether you're going to be active or passive. Network, talk with other people that are already doing what you want to do.
Yeah, which I love that brings it back to even just like communicating.
Right.
Just asking the questions. So then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
Oh man. You know, the thing that moves me the most is kids that, you know, don't have good families, kids in the, you know, foster system and adoption system. A lot of people at our church are really active in that. And I just think that's one of the most amazing things you can do is give a kid a home. So, I would work in that space. I would work to give, you know, more kids a good home. You know, if we were really well set out, I think we would even consider being a part of that, but certainly, you know, I would contribute to that. I think that's, you know, and this isn't always true, but I look at adults that are in a bad situation and my initial thought is that's your own fault, you know, because as an adult, you can control it, but kids can't. So I really feel for kids that are in a difficult spot. So I would put my time and resources there.
No, that's lovely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lee. I appreciate it. Before we end the show, would you mind sharing with our Adventures family where they can learn more about you and your company as well? Yeah.
If you look up my name on Facebook or LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there, especially LinkedIn. But then, go to our website, threefoldrei.com. That's spelled out THREEFOLD, and then REI as in realestateinvesting.com. We've got a free ebook there. You can, you know, sign up to be part of our newsletter there. You can reach out to us through there. So kind of it's all there. That's the best spot to go.
Awesome. Yeah. If you connect with Lee, make sure you say, hey, I heard you on the Adventures of Real Estate Investor podcast. Love to connect, and we'll be sure to accept that connection.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been truly a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Lee. Until next time, explore more, adventure awaits.
Woo!